This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so what we were seeing till yesterday is that we know that there are different RBACs known as role-based access controls in Azure, where we can go ahead and assign roles to individual users or a group of users. Also can be done. So again, the broad classification we said it is owner, contributor, and then a reader. And the biggest difference between an owner and a contributor is that owner can add or delete users, but contributor cannot do that. That's the biggest difference between an owner and a contributor. Reader is just someone who can just read into your subscription, look into your resources, and etc. That's what we were looking at yesterday. But we'll need to start out with, let's say, something known as the core services of Azure, right? So one of the primary purposes of a cloud, guys, if anyone can give me, what do you think is the primary purpose of a cloud, the very basic purpose of a cloud? Like, as in when I say cloud, what comes into your mind?
Storage,
These are the storage, security. Okay, so for me,
networking.
if okay, networking and etc. So that's right. For me, if someone says cloud, the first thing that I ever think of is a cloud known as drive.google.com, because that's the first thing that I've ever used. That's the first cloud that basically I ever used, or OneDrive and etc. All these were examples of a classic storage that you can take all your data, because in my physical machine there is a limitation to save the data. Let's say there is 1 terabyte. I can only save data up to 1 terabyte, and after 1 terabyte I may have to extend. And even the extension, meaning the number of or the amount of capacity that I can go for, is also limited in my machine. So that's the reason we switched to cloud, because there is unlimited storage space and etc. In the similar way, if organizations want to save data using Azure, there are services which you can leverage in Azure, or there are services that you can create in Azure for this specific purpose known as a data storage. But one of the most important question technically we need to ask is, what kind of a data do you store, or what type of a data do you want to store using Azure? Okay, so that's where I get into two primary types of data, or two broad classifications of data. One called structured data, the other is known as unstructured data. So two broad classifications are what I'm talking about. What exactly is structured data? Now let's understand by this particular table out here. Okay, now let's understand that, or let's imagine that this is the table that is being used by an organization in order to save names, IDs, and the respective meeting times. Okay, so there are like thousands of employees. Each and every employee has some schedule with a client, and they want to store all this data in a form of a table. Now, I know the name of an employee known as John. Okay, so let's imagine that you are an administrator who's handling all these things out. You know the name of an employee known as John, right? With this particular name, can you identify what is the meeting time of that particular employee? You can, because you can relate this particular name column with this particular meeting time column, right? Let's say if I don't give you the name, let's say if I give you a meeting time, can you filter out who are all the employees who have, let's say, meeting at that particular point in time? You can do that, right? Because this particular column is also relatable to the particular email ID and the name. Meaning all this is called as a relational data. Meaning you can relate the data, you can relate one piece of the data with the other. Meaning you can piece together everything. This is known as relational data, and services for a relational data or services for a structured data are SQL databases. Cosmos, Mongo, you have a lot of databases out there. That's where you basically use something known as DBMS, database management systems, which are used to traditionally store structured data. But you also have another kind of data which is unstructured. For example, let's say random video, photos, uh, just text documents, like bare text documents, PDF files, all these things. which are just loosely arranged. Let's say if you are an employee of an organization with 10,000 employees, I just give you a photo and ask, can you identify what is the name, ID, and let's say the meeting time? Probably not. You won't be able to relate, let's say, this particular information to any other piece of information out there. Let's say I just give you a PDF file out here, which consists of 10,000 lines of data. And if I ask you to, identify what is the time of one particular employee, you may not be able to tell it if that information is not provided in there, right? All that particular data is also important because let's say if you are a banking organization like ICICI, right, you will be dealing with a lot of unstructured data, transaction details of a customer, or let's say just plain data, the entire company's audit history, right? All these things are unstructured in nature. You will need a service to handle them, right? That particular service in our case is called a storage account in Azure. And this is what we are looking at today. So we are not really looking at structured data today. Structured data is for some other day. We are looking for something known, or we are dealing with something known as an unstructured data, and a specialist in handling the unstructured data is something known as a storage account out here. Okay, so let's look at that. Let's go into it. So we are dealing with unstructured, we are dealing with especially images, documents, videos, word files, whatever that you can think of that is not relational in nature, which cannot be handled by something like a database management system, which is a SQL or a Cosmos and everything. For this particular purpose, you have this particular service. Now, how do you create? What do you need to create? Firstly, you need an Azure tenant. You have an Azure tenant. Secondly, you need to go ahead and create an Azure subscription. You have an Azure subscription. Third, you need to have something known as a role-based access control, at least a contributor. I am an owner. I can create it. Fourth is what? A resource group, right? You need to basically have a resource group to create any other service inside that particular resource group out here. So what I'm going to do is that I'll start off with a resource group. So I'll say resource groups. I'm starting with a resource group out here, and I'm saying create a resource group. And in here, I'll just give a name to the resource group telling storage-rg. I gave a name to this particular resource group. I'll just say this is ECS2. I'll say review and create. I'm not tagging, tags are optional. So I am just reviewing and creating this app. That's it. So no tags, just a simple resource group out here. Now, how do you create a storage account? Is that you can come inside the resource group and say create. Okay, and say create or add, or you can just type in storage account out here. You'll get something known as storage account out here. So I can also go here and I'll say create. So any which ways it's okay. So here there are a couple of things that we need to follow. Now the first thing it's asking me is that what is the subscription that you want to create, and inside that particular subscription I will need something known as a resource group details. So please let me know what is the name of the resource group that you want to create this particular service in. So these are mandatory fields, right? Because you have a star here. You have a star here. These are mandatory fields. So great. I'll say, okay, fine. This is the subscription, which is pay as you go that I'm using. In your case, it can be free trial. And then I am basically selecting a resource group from here. If you don't have a resource group here, you can say create new and just create a resource group from here. Okay. You can also do that. Next, it's now asking me for something known as an instance detail. Now, what exactly is an instance? Is that a resource in Azure is normally called or loosely called as an instance. Okay, it's telling me an instance detail, and now it's telling me what is the name of your storage account that you want to go ahead and create. Okay, so let's give a name. I'll say storage account. Okay, I'm just giving a normal random name. And as and when I give this, it's now telling me that the storage account name, something is already taken. So in order to make sure that this is unique, meaning the name of the storage account should be unique. Okay, it should be unique. So let's do one thing. Let's put some special characters so that it'll be unique. Okay, I'll say exclamation at the rate, again throwing me an error, telling me that the field contains lower letters numbers only, meaning any service in Azure apart from a resource group is going to follow something known as a naming convention. So you need to have a proper naming standard for any other service. So what is the naming convention does Azure really follow out here? First, the very firstly, name should be unique. The name that you are giving out here should be unique to that particular service, meaning no one else in the entire world should be using that name. Second, it cannot contain special characters like at the rate, exclamation. You cannot do that. Spaces, even space is considered as a special character out here. You cannot have a special character. Third, the minimum length of a storage account is 3 characters. You cannot have a storage account service or you cannot have a name of a storage account less than 3. The minimum character length is 3. The maximum character length is 24, meaning you can write from A to let's say Z, which is 26 again. So the maximum character length is 24. So 3 is the minimum, maximum is again 24. And this is the convention what you should follow. So how do we normally do it? Like in an organization, how do we normally follow this out? Is that whenever you are allocated to a project, right, in an organization, you follow a proper naming standard out here. Like what we do is that generally we say it's the project name. Let's say your project name is something like healthcare. You just give it as health CAR care, just like that. That's it. Healthcare. Let's the name of the service that is used in Azure, which is let's say storage account. So I'll say it is STOR, store. Let's the region where you are creating this out. Let's say I'm creating this in a region known as East US or East US 2 or Central US. I'll give a region code to it known as EU2, East US 2. This is how we build the names of a service. Okay, so what happens right now is that this name loosely translates to something like, since our project is healthcare, I'll just say healthcare, STOR store. This is being created in a location like US East 2. So I'll say East US 2. This is how we build the name so that the name can be unique. So each and every project will follow a proper naming convention. And very importantly, the name can only contain smaller letters, numbers, 3 to 24 characters, name unique, and it cannot contain special characters like at the rate or something like that, or space or something like that. You cannot do that. Okay. So this is how we build the names of a service. So this is also what mandatory parameter. You cannot change it after creating the service. Again, region. So now it's now asking you that, okay, fine, you want to create something like a storage service, right? So what normally happens is in the backend, when you're creating a storage account and let's say saving data into it, right? So all you do is save data here. This data is written onto, let's say, an actual physical server in the backend that is sitting in a data center somewhere in the world. So all the data is taken and you have servers arranged in the form of racks, and it's just taken, all this data is just taken and put it on, or basically is written on that particular server. So again, server is nothing like but let's say like our system, but like with a lot of space and etc. Right? So now it's asking you, okay, fine, which region of the world that you want to actually go ahead and create this particular service in. Again, there are three more factors that I basically consider out here: political stability, geographical stability, and proximity to my business, meaning how close is this particular storage service to my business. These are the factors what I consider while creating this service out. So I'll just take loosely, I'll say, okay, fine, this is East US 2 out here. Okay. Now it's telling you what is the performance type that you actually want out here: standard, premium. Now, one good thing about Azure is that, let's say you do not know about any option out here. Okay. All you need to do is that you have an I button here, right? It says determine what and everything, all that stuff. If you just say, click on this I button and just say learn more, you'll be diverted to the Microsoft documentations. So this is how we normally learn about any service that we don't know. We click on this I button and say learn more, and we just go through this particular documentation. Okay, this is how we normally understand what the service is and etc. Okay, so but coming down to this particular thing, it says standard, it says premium. Now, what is the standard here? What is a premium here? Is very simple. Did you guys hear about HDD and SSD while buying a laptop? You might have heard about it, right? HDD meaning it's a mechanical hard disk, meaning whenever you write the data, there is a magnetic disk inside it and the data will be written into it, meaning there are moving parts to it. Whereas SSD is a new technology, wherein SSD stands for solid state drive. It's very simple, there are no moving parts there, so the rate at which the data is written and the data is being read is fast. So I am using an SSD laptop, so that's the reason my operating system is loading faster and etc. Here it's telling you that, okay, fine, you are writing data to a physical server. On that particular physical server, do you need a HDD or do you need an SSD? That's what Microsoft is asking you out here. Like, do you need an HDD or do you need an SSD? If you go for a standard, you'll be getting something known as a HDD. If you go for a premium, you'll be getting something known as an SSD. So the question is again then, is there a pricing difference? Of course, yes. There definitely is a pricing difference between HDD and SSD. Just like when we go ahead and buy a laptop with SSD, it's a bit costlier than the one without SSD, right? So that's what Microsoft is now asking you, is that please select your performance. Now, even this parameter or even this field, right, called performance, you cannot change it after creating the storage account. You'll have to decide this before you go ahead and create the storage account. Okay. Any questions still here, guys?
I have
All
one
good till
question
here?
here.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, reason you selected for East US 2, right? And in the
Hmm.
resource group, something like if it is mentioned for East US, is it
Hmm.
workable in different regions?
Yes, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So the thing is that your resource group can be sitting in any location of the world, not a problem. So there is actually no relation between the resource group, I mean the location of the resource group and the location of the resource itself. Resource group is nothing but a drive, or it's nothing but a namespace or a logical grouping of your resources. That's it. So there is no
Okay.
correlation between those two.
Mhm.
But normally the best practice is that if I basically select something like East US 2, my resource group, my resources, everything will be in the same region when you follow the project convention, right? If let's say your project decides that we'll just create resources in East US 2, you'll have all the resources actually getting created in East US 2. Okay.
Uh, okay. Once we created any instance, so in the
Hmm.
future, if required any region change, can we do
Hmm.
that, or else is there any possibility?
So some resources do support region change. There are very small amount of resources, to be honest, which supports region change. But normally, for about 95% of the resources, you cannot change the region. Reason being, I mean, you'll have a very good thought process before you select a region out here. So there'll be months of time invested to understand which region is suitable for our business. So only then you'll go ahead and create it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that one.
Okay. Okay, so moving forward, so these are the mandatory parameters that Azure is now asking you, is that the storage account name, the region, the performance tier, and etc. There is another option out here, which when I come down, it's now telling me something known as a redundancy. What exactly is the meaning of redundancy out here? Or in order to simplify this more further, let's understand this a bit. You're now storing data using something like a service of Azure or a service of Microsoft. The question now is that how do you guarantee that my data is safe? Or how do you guarantee that my data is not lost? In any of the events, how do you guarantee that the data is not lost is the question that I'll ask to Microsoft. Microsoft will tell you that, you know what, I will give you a guarantee of XYZ number, some number, that your data will not be lost. I still say that, you know what, I still don't believe you because I am very much protective about my data, because all this data is years of my work. Because years and years in work, I've collected all these data. Now I want to store this data somewhere. Because one very important thing out here is, guys, in today's world, data is money. Because if you have data, you can basically build better applications and etc. Right? So this service is very crucial for any company out here. So now I'm asking Microsoft that how do you guarantee it out? Microsoft tells you that, you know what, I give you a guarantee in the form of something known as redundancy. There are multiple options in redundancy, starting with something like LRS, GRS, ZRS, GZRAGR, I mean GZRS and everything. Let's start with the very basic, which is LRS, or acronym for locally redundant storage. Now please pay attention, guys, this is very very important. Like whenever interview questions are being asked on storage account, this is a very important question that they normally ask. Locally redundant storage. Now what happens in locally redundant storage? Let's look at this in an example. So I'll just again click on redundancy, say learn more, go to the Microsoft documentations out here because they have a better image out here. So it's telling Azure redundancy and everything, and it's telling locally redundant storage and etc. Now here is a diagram that I want you all to generally look at here. Is that Azure is now telling you that, okay, fine, if you are storing the data in a data center called EastUS2 or any of the data center out there using something known as LRS, I will not create one copy of your data, but I will replicate, meaning I'll make sure to have three copies of your data in the same data center. So one data center, right, will not just have one server, it will have thousands of servers. It's a very big thing, right? So data center is a big thing. So I'll have thousands of servers. So when I basically take a file, copy it into the storage account or put it into the storage account, Microsoft is now telling that, okay, fine, if you're giving me one copy, I'll make two copies out of it and store on three different servers. One is your primary, secondary, tertiary copy, three copies out here in the same data center. And this is synchronous copy happening at the same time. Meaning, if you are now copying the data, if you are now copying a file, in the same second, Microsoft is going to make two other copies of your file. This is known as a synchronous in nature, synchronous copy. And for this, Microsoft is telling you, now if you look at this, right, a write request for your storage account, LRS happens synchronously, meaning three replicas, three copies of the same data is copied across three different servers in the same data center. Then if you ask Microsoft that, okay, fine, this is great, but let's say there is some natural disaster happening in ECS2 and the data center has got affected. All my data is in the same data center. Then how do you guarantee the availability of my data? Because for a customer that is sitting in India and wanting to check this data out, I'm not really concerned whether there's an earthquake in East US2 or something, right? I'm not really concerned about it. The concern that I have is my business should run. That's it. Wherever you are, I don't care, but my business should run. Right? That's what is the norm today, right? Then Microsoft tells you that that's exactly the reason why I am not giving you the best SLA. Now, if you create your data in something known, or if you basically create, or if you store your data in something known as LRS, Microsoft is going to give you a guarantee, or in a technical term called SLA, Service Level Agreement, of 99.9999, like this 11 nines. Meaning, out of every 100 times, these many times your data will be available. That your data is not going to go anywhere. Like out of every 100, sorry, out of every 100, your data is going to come back 99.999 to the 11 times 9 times out here. This is what the promise what Microsoft gives you, telling that LRS. But being a super giant business like let's say an ICICI website right now, I'm a bit concerned about this because I'm still exposed to that particular 0 point some percentage, right? I'm still exposed there. I don't want to take that chance. Because in LRS, I'm just getting 3 copies, great, but in the same data center. What if the entire data center goes down? That's when Microsoft tells you that, you know what, you should have been a bit more concerned about your data. That's the reason I am giving you other options known as ZRS, Zone Redundant Service, which is the other model, or which is, let's say, the other option in the replication tier, where East US now, or East US basically, is a big region. When I'm talking about East US, I'm talking about the entire coast of the United States, right? In the East US, do you think there'll only be one data center? No. There will be multiple data centers in different cities. In different cities, there'll be multiple data centers. What Microsoft is now going to tell you is that, you know what, if you create something known as a zone redundant service, I will make sure to place 3 copies of your data, but not in the same data center right now, but across 3 different data centers in the same zone, which are connected to each other. I mean, they are a bit close to each other, but at the same time, if one data center goes down, your data will be available. Your data is actually going to be available from the data center 2 or 3. I'll make sure it is available. Okay, this is what Microsoft is telling you. And for this, right, Microsoft is telling that, you know what, it's slightly better. It's not 11 nines, but it is 12 nines. Meaning out of every 100 times, your data is going to be available for 99.9999 up to 12. And even this is a synchronous copy happening at the same time. Meaning, if you place one copy of your data in something like a data center 1, 2 and 3 are automatically going to appear. The question is, do you have control on the data centers? No, you don't. It's Microsoft which will choose the data center and place the data strategically. They have a backend algorithm which will do this. Now I again come to Microsoft and say, okay, fine, I am convinced but not happy, because for me, let's say if the entire zone goes down, which is a very, very unlikely situation, but yes, companies consider that too. If let's say the entire zone goes down, then what is my, or where is my data? Microsoft tells you, okay, fine, if you are talking about the entire zone going down, that's the reason I do have another option called as geo redundant storage. Like whatever question you ask, I have an answer to that. If it's not LRS, it's ZRS. If it's not ZRS, it's something known as GRS out here. Geo redundant storage, where Microsoft is now going to tell you that, you know what, there is not, like, I mean, there is not the same zone. It's not the same zone out here, but it's a different region altogether. Let's say if you are now creating, let's say, data in the primary region, I'll give you an LRS in the primary region, meaning in the same data center, I'll give you 3 copies of your data synchronously. Also, I will make sure to take all this data and make 3 copies in a different region altogether. I'm not talking about a zone, I'm talking about a region right now. Meaning, if you create the first region creation is in your hand, meaning it's your option to go ahead and select something like East US2. The second region will be West US2. All this comes in something known as region pairs. East, West, North, South. Those are region pairs out here. Meaning, if you create data in the primary data center, I'll give you 3 copies there. Great. I'll also make sure to replicate it in the secondary region, and I'll also give you 3 copies in the secondary region, which is thousands of miles from each other. In this way, your data is available how many times right now? It's saying 99.16 This is the availability that I guarantee you. Now, out of every 100, your data will now be available for 99 point some 69s out here. Now, this availability is over a given year. But one catch out here is that this copy is asynchronous in nature, not happening in the same time. Microsoft needs somewhere around 20 minutes to make sure that this data in the primary region is replicated to the secondary region, because there is a lot of distance between them. It needs some bandwidth, it needs some time to go ahead and replicate the data. It also depends upon the amount of data that you're storing. Okay, depending upon the amount of data, Microsoft will now tell you that okay, fine, I will make sure to copy your data asynchronously to a secondary region, and in that secondary region you will have a synchronous copy of 3 copies, LRS in the secondary region also. Okay, and there's also a new option that came into picture right now, which is called GZRS, Geo Zone Redundancy, a combination of geo and zone. Meaning what happens in here is that in here, in the primary region, you'll not get an LRS, you'll get a ZRS. Meaning in the primary region also, you have 3 copies of your data spread across different data centers, and in the secondary region, you will get an LRS. Okay. So again, the popular questions are: what is LRS? What is GRS? What is ZRS? What would you go for? Like what option would you go for? How do you decide the pricing and etc.? That is a popular question. Secondly, the SLA is that what is the SLA that you get? But you don't have to really remember this. You just have to say, okay, fine, there's a better SLA. Like LRS, GRS has a better SLA than ZRS. ZRS has a better SLA than LRS. That's what you can really tell out here, right? So this is what are the replications offered by Microsoft. Now, the question here again is that if I move from LRS to GRS, will the pricing be more? Of course, yes, it will be more because Microsoft is doing more right now. Microsoft is giving you a better service right now. Then how do I decide the price? How do I know what is the price out here? Is that you have a website here, or you just do a Google search known as Azure Pricing Calculator. So this is nothing but an online calculator which will give you or which will tell you what is the price of a service. Okay, so let's go into it. Let's see what our service will really cost like. So you have multiple services out here, and one service that I'm looking at is what? Storage account out here. So I can select a storage account. It says okay, fine. So it'll give you a very detailed column out here telling that this is what is the cost and everything. Let's come down and let's say now I'm creating a storage account in what? East US2. So it's a blob storage account. We'll see what that blob storage account and everything. Performance tier is standard. This is what I'm creating in. Tier is LRS. The approximate data that I'm storing is something around 2000 GB. This is the approximate data that I'm storing. It's not the maximum capacity. It's just telling you that it's an approximate data that you're storing. And I am going for a pay-as-you-go subscription. If I do this model, if I come down here, the approximate price per month that I need to pay is somewhere around 1638 rupees. This is per a month cost. Meaning if you're using this service, if you're storing somewhere around 2000 GB of data and you're doing a lot of operations on top of that data, you'll be charged somewhere around 1638 rupees per month. Then what if I upgrade myself to a GRS? Let's do that. Let's come here and let's go to something like, from LRS, let's say ZRS. Okay, let's do the second option out here. Let's come down again to see what is the price right now. Let's come down. Do you now see the estimated cost is somewhere around 11,474 rupees? Do you see the amount of difference that you are having right now? Also, there is, let's say, something like sorry, yeah, it's coming down. This is the amount. Sorry, so this cost, right? So this is not one thing. Let's say come back again. Let's do an LRS. We'll actually get the price. Let's see the estimated monthly cost out here. So this is just the upfront monthly cost, and let's say the estimated. So this is around 10,000 rupees. LRS is around 10,000 rupees out here. ZRS is around 11,000 rupees out here. If I go for the best tier, let's say something like GRS or GZRS or something like this, right? GZRS, which is the best option that is available out there. The cost just spiked up somewhere around 15,000 rupees per month when you're using 2000 GB of data. It also depends upon the number of the amount of data that you're storing and everything. So this is the cost that you are paying, like an estimated cost that you are paying to Azure to store all this data. Now this cost includes something like the support cost, the number of read operations, write operations that you're doing on this particular storage account. Everything gets calculated and they are giving you an estimated. This can go up, go down. It depends upon your usage. So this is the estimate what Microsoft is giving you, telling that this is 15,000 rupees per month and stuff like that. Okay. Now, one very important question here is that you'll see a lot of businesses, right, using data centers either in the Europe or US, because I said it is politically stable, geographically stable, and also close to your business and etc. But what if I am a business who's now interested to, let's say, use it in India? Okay, something like India. So let's say India as a central India. Let's do a refresh out here. Give me 1 second. I'll just do a refresh and I'll select the region again. Okay, let's fill up these details again. Let's say LC, let's say Central India, or let's say something like India. Do you see what are the options that are available to you right now? You don't have GZRS, you don't have ZRS, meaning not all the regions, sorry, not all the Azure regions support something known as zone redundancy. Not all the regions of Azure support something known as zone redundancy. And a very popular again interview question out here asking that if I am selecting a region like India, I'm not getting something like ZRS. Why? Why is that? The reason very simple. India as of now doesn't support zone redundancy. They are coming up. They are like establishing a lot of data centers out here also. Like these options can be soon seen again. Right. South India I've selected. There is no zone redundancy. If I select something like Central India, it's a recommended region. This has zone redundancy. Earlier, even this did not have zone redundancy. Even this did not have so many options out here. Okay. So again, let's fall back on US and let's say this is the basic tier. LRS. So these are the options that is there on the first page of it. We are on the first page and this is what we are discussing about right now. And if I, let's say, the question here right now is that if I, let's say, create my storage account in a tier known as LRS, can I change it at a later point in time to GRS or ZRS? Yes, you can. You can do that. This option can be changed. This option can be interchangeable. You can change this out. Okay. Let's go into next, which is advanced. Now we don't need all these things, like it says require REST API and everything. We don't need all these things out. I'm just going with the default options. Whatever is there, I'm just going with the default options out here. Like we generally don't touch this out at all. Let's come down and let's discuss one very important thing out here, which is known as access tier. What exactly is access tier? Here it says hot and cool. Let's see what that is. Now, one very important thing of a storage account, or one very important utilization of a storage account, is that in a storage account, you are going to save data. Whenever you are saving the data into the storage account or uploading the data into the storage account or downloading the data from the storage account, I call it a write operation. Okay, it's a write, meaning if you're writing in something on some or on the service known as a storage account out there. Let's say if you're just looking at the data, just you want to just view the data and etc. It's called a read operation. Two things out here, write and read operations. Each and every write and each and every read operations also has a price to it. For example, if I come back and say, okay, fine, let's see. So let's say extra storage and everything. Do you see this data write and data read? Each and everything has a cost to it. Some amount of cost that is associated with it. For example, for every, let's say, 10,000 write operations, you'll have to pay somewhere around 84 rupees. Meaning if you write data 10,000 times, you'll have to pay somewhere around 84 rupees out here. Because backend, if you're just writing a data out here, Microsoft has to do a lot in the backend. It has to make multiple copies of your data, especially when let's say you're on tier like ZRS and everything, right? It needs to replicate the data synchronously. So that's the price for it. The question now is that what do you exactly want to do with this particular storage account? Let's say again, let's take an example and let's fall back on let's say something like ICICI out here. Okay. Now there are two primary customers in ICICI. One customer basically wants to look at the daily transactions. Like I, as a customer, want to look at, let's say, I want to estimate or I want to understand what is my spending in the month so that I can better be prepared for the next month, right? So I want to look at the monthly transactions, the daily transactions. I want to see all these reports. Like me, how many others in the entire world will do that? A lot more people, right? Because monthly daily transactions are very common, very frequent. So the term that I'm using is a frequent. Data that is used frequently or data that is accessed frequently should be saved or basically should be saved in a tier known as hot access tier. In hot access tier, the the rate that Microsoft charges you for a read or a write operation is less because they know that this is frequently being accessed. But if you want to store tons and tons of data, the price per GB of data to store is high. So Microsoft is telling you that you know what, do a cost optimization in your mind. Only store limited amount of data that is being used frequently or that is being visited frequently, which is in a hot tier, which is let's say being used frequently and etc. Now there are another type of a customers also which very rarely want to go ahead back in like 10 years and want to see what they spent this particular date. Like it's very unlikely, right? Like even if you go for a bank loan, apply for a house, like they'll ask you for 1 year bank statement. No one is going to ask you what you did like 5 years back, on that particular day, in that particular Christmas, what did you spend, right? You don't do that. Very infrequent, very, very rare. That is known as a cool tier. Is that in a cool tier, just store your data. Like if you're a banking organization or very popularly a newspaper organization where you want to store all your archival records, like you want a 10-year-old newspaper and you want to just store it, that's it, you don't want to do anything. For that specific purpose, go for cool. In a cool, Microsoft is telling you that you know what, I won't charge you that high for storing the data, but in case if you want to retrieve this data, meaning if you want to go ahead back in time and get the data, the charge is high, the transactional cost is high. Now that is the very reason if you go to a bank and ask them that you know what, I want a bank statement which is 5 years old, they'll tell you that you know what, you'll have to pay some charge, which is a service fee. That service fee is nothing but the data retrieval cost what the cloud charges them. That's how it boils down here. Okay, so you can choose out here whether it is a hot storage account that you want to create or a cool storage account that you want to create. Depending upon this, your cost is accordingly charged. So this also can be changed at a later point in time. By default, if you create a storage account, it will get created in something known as a hot. If you need both, yes, you can definitely do that also. Meaning you cannot select both here, but when you store the files, right, Microsoft is again going to ask you whether you want to store it as hot or cool. You can do that as well. While storing the files, while uploading the files also, you can do that. We'll also look at that. So you can have a combination of hot and cool. Because yes, that is very genuine ask. Because I have both types of data. How do I store it now? You can do that as well. So hot and cool. And then if I go next, there is something known as networking. Now we will look at this in great detail. I'm not touching this at this point. As of now, I'm selecting an option called public endpoint all networks, meaning everyone can access this particular storage account. And in data protection, there is something known as soft delete. Very simple. It's telling soft delete for blobs. What is a blob is nothing but when we call a file, Microsoft calls it as a blob. Now, whatever files that you're uploading is known as a blob in storage account. And that's the reason this is also popularly called as a blob storage. Okay. So just in case if you delete it, just in case these are files, accidentally if you delete it, can you retain it? Meaning, just like you have a recycle bin in your computer where you delete it and you can retain it, right? The soft delete option soft delete option here acts like a recycle bin. And here it's telling, okay, fine, you can retain your data for 7 days. I can also change it to something like 365. You can do that. And what is the minimum maximum number? Let's see. So not really sure about the minimum maximum number. I think it is 365. I don't think you can go beyond 365, but I'll just do a read on this and let you know about it. So as of now, I'll just take it as 7. Tags again. You can have resource tags also. You can basically say team is development or team is QA and everything. Finally, review and create. In the review and create page, it will tell you what all options that you have selected in this particular storage. Like it'll just give you an invoice of what you have selected, telling that okay, fine, these are the options that you're going for, and you can say create. This is going to take somewhere around 2 minutes to give you something known as a storage account into a resource group known as storage RG. Okay, in that particular region. Okay, is this fine, guys? Any questions still here? Now, in this class, I'm not going into how do you upload the data and etc. Because we'll have to see firstly what are the basics, and we'll have to basically digest this out to understand what the subject is. Tomorrow's class we'll be looking at how do you upload data, where do you upload data, if you upload it, how do you retrieve it, and all that stuff. Okay, so any questions till here, guys? Anything that I can take till here? And is the language okay? Is everyone able to follow? Fast, slow, good? Just in case if I go fast, please do let me know, because I have 3 parallel batches. One is in some 40th class, so the pace is of course different. Yes, someone had a question.
Hello,
Yeah, please go ahead, Omkar.
sir. LRS, GRS, purpose of 1 second.
So the primary difference between can you please go on mute, Omkar, because I'm getting a bit of echo.
Sir, individual combined, sir. Adi
I'm sorry.
individual combined, sir. LRS, GRS.
లేదు LRS డిఫరెంట్ ఆప్షన్ అండి, జిఆర్ఎస్ డిఫరెంట్ ఆప్షన్. ఎల్ఆర్ఎస్ అనేది డిఫరెంట్, జిఆర్ఎస్ అనేది డిఫరెంట్.
Okay,
ఎల్ఆర్ఎస్ లో
okay, okay.
వెళ్ళినప్పుడు మీకు ఎల్ఆర్ఎస్ లో వెళ్ళినప్పుడు
Okay, okay,
మీకు
sir.
3 కాపీస్ వస్తుంది సేమ్ డేటా సెంటర్ లో. ఓకే
Okay, okay.
ఓకే. అండ్ ఆల్సో ఐ లీవ్ ది లింక్ టు ది డాక్యుమెంటేషన్ అవుట్ హియర్. So I'll make sure to leave the link out here. So there's some question for standard premium, the different charges and different charges selecting a region. Yes. So there is a different charge for selecting a region as well. So even the region is different. So how do I get this to link? I mean, how do I get it here? Is that I just went into the replication. There was an I button here. I said learn more, and I got to the link of this particular, documentation page out here. So please read this documentation, guys, because this is very important. Meaning I'm not asking you to make notes out of it. Don't do notes, nothing. Use this documentation links, because over a period of time, right, this is all changing over a period of time, very quick. Microsoft is improving these documentations on a daily basis, so they're changing on a daily basis, timeline, etc. So please make sure that you're just reading through it. Like whenever you get time, please read through it. Okay. Any more questions here, guys?
Sir, one question. Suppose in LRS or ZRS, if we um, get our production data corrupted,
Right.
okay, so
Mhm.
like how we can get the replicated data available to us? So is that something which Microsoft has to do, or we have to do something from our end to get the replicated data available for us?
Okay, great question is that how do I get the secondary data that is there? Now, in order to get your replicated data, meaning in order to make sure that you also basically are able to read that replicated data, in LRS, you will have to raise a ticket to Microsoft telling that, what, my data is lost. Can you please give it back to me and stuff? But there is a tier known as RAGRS. For example, if I come down and if I want to change this configuration, we'll also see that what configuration exactly it is. If I come down, there is something known as RAGRS, Read Access Geo Redundant Storage. If you create your storage account in this tier, in this particular replication tier, if the primary goes down, you'll also be able to read it from the secondary. Okay. In LRS or GRS, you cannot do that. Your data is just available. If you request Microsoft, they'll do something known as, or they'll date something known as a data retrieval cost, and they'll give you the data. It's going to be available pretty fast. But for production data, what question Yash asked is that if I have a production data, if I want it to also be available, then how do I do it? It is RAGRS out here. But if it is any other tier, then you'll have to basically raise a ticket to Microsoft, and they'll charge you something known as a data retrieval cost, where you'll be charged a very minimal amount and you'll get your data back again. Okay, so does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else, guys? So guys, the request here is that please make sure to take the daily videos. If the class is covered today, please make sure to cover it today only. Okay, please make sure to cover it today and make sure to just get an understanding of it. Try to do the same practical, without watching the video. See what errors that you're getting, make a note of these errors and etc. And whenever you get an error, first Google it out. If you're not getting it even after Google, please do text me out. I'll help you out. Okay. Okay, guys, then have a great day ahead. Thank you.